Hi, this is Maggie Richards here with Life in Christ TV. And I just gave, a kind of a long talk about Joseph and about obedience and Nebuchadnezzar and, a whole bunch of stuff. And it's a really good video. So if you haven't seen it, take a look, go back and look at it. And this kind of comes off that because as I was sharing the other video, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and you shall love your neighbors yourself. And in 1 Corinthians 13, it tells you about the power of love. And he says, if you have all the gifts, if you have the big, huge ministry, if you're this great person or that great person, and you don't have love, you're absolutely nothing. And you're just a noisy gong. And so I wanted to share with you a testimony about the power of love. And as I shared before, I had this really great life on the farm, loved it. My granddad was there by 5 o'clock every morning. We were farmers, we 5 o'clock, we'd start milking the cows. I just loved it. It was a great life. Moved into town. My dad got some advice to join the Elks, and he did, and it became a living nightmare. My folks were over at the Elks drinking and getting drunk, and, it just went from this really great life to this really horrid life, and it didn't take long. And I was trying to figure out, oh, God, what happened here? Because I got saved at 9 and a half, and it brought the whole family into turmoil. And so I grew some harsh feelings towards my parents. Yes, we became wealthy, but I felt like it was blood money. I felt like it was for a horrible cost, for what they got. And my dad had wanted to quit drinking, but my mom wanted to party, and stuff. And so it didn't happen. And he became very wounded, had a lot of guilt and horrible, just like a complete downness about he didn't like what he'd done. He didn't like the fruit of it. He was feeling horrible, and he was feeling horrible about himself. And my brother died, and he blamed himself. It wasn't his fault, but that he hadn't been a better example. My brother was killed, but anyway, he took it upon himself. He took upon himself why everything was going so badly. And even though he had good intentions of wanting this really blessed life for his family, because of the Elks, it didn't happen. And like I said, I grew some really harsh feelings, some hard feelings. I had a lot of wounds, but God helped me through that to where I was able to release it. And I'd go up to my dad's and I'd see him, and stuff. And my dad looked so drawn. He looked like the most unhappy, wounded person on all the earth. And I thought, Lord, what do I do? Because I still felt that rejection, but I wanted more. I wanted him to be good. My parents were divorced. My mom was in another city, and so it was my dad that I was seeing. And I thought, you know what? Love never fails. And I thought, I don't care how I feel. I may have some wounds, from that, but I don't care how I feel. I'm just going to say every time I'm there and every time I leave, I love you, Dad, as I'm walking out the door. So I did. I started, but Dad was always sitting at the dining room table, kind of at the head, and we'd be talking around the table and stuff. And so I'd get ready to leave, and as I got ready, I go, I love you, Dad. See you later. And nothing much happened, for a little while, and I go up there again and see him, and I love you, Dad. Talk to you later. Next time I see him, I love you, Dad. I'll talk to you later. Finally, after a few weeks of me saying, I love you, Dad, even though it was in passing, even though it was as we were leaving, my dad one day gave me this. It was a sideways look. You may not have seen it if you didn't know where to look. It was just sideways looked at me. And I thought, wow, he didn't even turn his head. He just got the eyes. And then a little bit more time went by. I love you, Dad. I'll see you later. Next time, I love you. I love you, Dad. Bye. And the next time that there was a breakthrough, I heard, mm-hmm. And I was so excited because I ran out to the car because my family had already gone out. And I got into the passenger seat and I said, I think he said it. I think he said me too. I'm not sure because it was so quiet, but I think I heard it. I think he said me too. And he had. And as time went on, it got a little stronger. Me too. And then it got to, I love you too. And his countenance started lifting up. And he didn't look as drawn and wounded and like the pits of despair. He didn't look like that anymore. His countenance was changing. It was lifting off him. And he got to the place where he was saying, I love you too. I love you. When he left. And oh my gosh, the first time I heard that, I just wanted to cry. I was so elated. My dad said, I love you too. And then it got to where he would give me a hug. And we would embrace one another. Dad, I love you. I love you too. And then it went, he became unwounded. He became more whole. And then I was able to talk to him about God. He believed in God, but he didn't serve God. I don't know why he didn't, but it got to the point where I had his salvation promised. And he was 91, and he'd been in the hospital. And I'd been believing, I had God's word that my dad was going to be saved. And so he was in the hospital, dumb things from his doctor. He was hallucinating because he didn't have enough oxygen in his blood. And I took him to the ER, and they had to just take this machine and blow oxygen into him. And his his face, it was just blown back as well. I'd never seen so much force go into a person. And the doctor said, I don't know if he's going to live or not. We've got 48 hours to see. We're pumping him with this oxygen, but, and putting him on medication, but he's got to make it. He's almost dead. And he's got to make it for 48 hours for that medicine to kick in. I don't know if he will. And I said, well, that's not what I believe. I believe he'll make it. I have a promise from God. And the doctor just said, well, okay. So he was admitted, and there were 3 times where the doctor or somebody would say he's dying, and I go, no, that's not what I believe. I have a word from God that he's going to make it. He's going to make it. And after the first time, where after he got up into his room, and he thought he was going to die, I said, Dad, we've been praying for you, and I believe, God saved you. You're not going to die. And he just looked at it and he goes, well, I don't know about that. And I said, okay. And then he went for another 24, 48 hours, and then he nosedived again. And my daughter had come in to see him and had kind of worn him out and stuff. And I can't remember exactly what happened, but the second one happened where it looked like he was going to die. And I said, no, doctor, that's not what I believe. My dad's going to live. And I didn't say anything to my dad because I didn't want him rejecting the word, and me doing more harm than good. So the third time, my dad, after my daughter left, went into totally exhausted. And the doctor came in and said, because he was not waking up, and the doctor said, it looks like he's slipping away. And I said, I don't believe that. I said, my dad's going to live. And the doctor just shrugged. It was a different doctor, and walked out. The nurse came over to me, and she got this close to me, and she said, look, he's passing away. You need to receive it, and you need to prepare yourself for it. But she said it very harshly and in my face, and it caused me to back up. I mean, it was like she yelled at me. It was like she was Satan, and I know she wasn't, but it was like she was Satan, just bam at me. And I said, well, that's not what I believe. And I looked at my husband, at the time, and he goes, no, we don't believe that. And the woman huffed out, and I said, I've got to go home. I said, I've got to pray. And so I went home and I said, Lord, I've been standing in faith. I've been believing your word. God, show me what to do, God. My dad will not die but live. And the Lord said, there was a couple that rented from my dad and had been scammed, and they couldn't pay their rent. He said, go forgive it, which was over $1,000. Go forgive it and take them money as well as seed offering for food and things like that. So I did. I got in the car. I took him, I think it was like $500. I said, I forgive your rent, and here's $500 for food. And they couldn't believe it. They were in shock. But God showed me they were also hit. And I was sowing into someone the power of God's love and forgiveness. And I told them it was from God. And so God said that would do it. And so I went back to the hospital the next morning. And not only was my dad not dead, But there was a long, long hallway where I got off the elevator. He was the last room on the left hallway. I could see this blob, but I didn't know what it was. And I kind of think it was my dad. And I kind of thought it was my husband at the time. And I'm going, but I'm not sure what that thing is. Anyway, I got down closer, and I got there just before he got to his room. And that big blob that I saw was one of those chairs that they have in the hospital, the recliner type, was kind of big. And it was on wheels, and they were putting it behind him. Not only was he not dead, but he had walked halfway up that hallway and back, and he was almost back to his room. And I was just elated. No, my dad is not dead. Look at him. Not only is he not dead, but he's up and walking. And he only had to stay in the hospital a few more days. Well, long story short, I told my dad, he opened up the door. I think it was the next day. And my daughter and my son was there, and we were sitting there visiting with him. And he kind of looked and goes, I thought I was a goner, but now I know I'm going to make it. And I said, Dad, you were a goner. And I told him how we had stood in faith. I told him how we had people praying for him. I told him about when the doctors came in 3 times and said he was going to die, but that we stood and know. And he just looked at me like it was a new world, like it was a new concept to him. He was intrigued. He was listening, but it was a new thought to him. Well, so we left. My brother came in that night and said, worldly brother, kind of, a lukewarm Christian, but wanted my dad saved, and started to say, Dad, do you believe? And he goes, yes, I do. And he put both hands out and accepted the Lord as his Savior. It took me years, but the power of love and the power of believing God and the power of doing what God tells you to do brought forth that which he promised. And my dad got saved. And God did take him home 2 weeks later on the day that he was coming home. That's another miracle I won't go into right now because it's a little bit long and I don't want to lengthen the video, but it's also a miracle. And, God's in the miracle business. Yeah, I know that I've shared a lot of miracles, and you may be thinking, wow, can all that be true? Yeah, it's true, because I believe God, because I've sought him with my whole heart, and because of what he's called us to. But yeah, it's all true. And I've shared it in the form of kind of like the miracles that God did, healing the sick, raised the dead, casting out demons, kind of like a dinner bell, but with the scriptures in there to show you, yeah, all of this is true. God does all of this. He's a miracle working God. He's the head, not the tail. He's the God that's defeated Satan. He's the God that's your healer. He's the God that's your deliverer. He protects you, shields you, your best friend. And he's the God that warns you through the prophetic. And he's a God that will speak to you audibly and in dreams and, in the still small voice, but so much more. We've been lied to that the only way he speaks is a still small voice. And so we don't look at anything else. That's one way. But just look through the Bible. It's not the only way. When that was told back in the Old Testament, he brought forth the word to Mary, by a visitation, an angel. I mean, there are all sorts of ways. Peter fell into a trance. John, when he did Revelation, whether in the Spirit or out of the Spirit, I do not know. You guys seek God. Seek the supernatural. You got to know discernment, because there's a lot of people out there that can't discern anything. And it's a problem in the church. We just are in our own little world thinking that Satan doesn't exist. Well, he does, and he is the deceiver of the whole world. So you got to make sure you're tucked in with Christ. But, you just got to know he is God. He is creator. He paid the price for your salvation and for your healing and for everything else. And I just encourage you, tuck into him and let what I've been sharing open up your heart and open up who you are so that you can receive much, much more. And we're doing the same thing. I'm not just pointing the finger. God's continually showing us things and bringing new revelations. And if you think about the angels that are around the throne, holy, 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 because they're getting revelation all the time. It's true with us too. God has never run out of miracles. He's never run out of ways to meet you and ways to do good to you and ways to bring you into alignment. But anyway, I wanted to share the power of love. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbors yourself. So anyway, that's it. God bless you guys. Bye-bye.